Welcome back, pre-calculus. Here's lesson 1.7. We're on example number 4. We are going to find the inverse of our functions graphically. So remember that for our function and its inverse, the domain of the function becomes the range of the inverse, and the range of the function becomes the domain of the inverse. In other words, the x and the y switched, and that was one of the very first steps that we did algebraically. We switched the x's and y's so that we could solve for the new y. We're going to do the same thing graphically. We're going to find a couple of nice points on our graph. So say this point, this point, this point, and we're going to flip the x's and the y's for them so that we can graph our new function. So for these points, this point, first point would be -1, 0. Then we have the point 0, 1. And then we have the point 1, 2. And we're going to take those points and we're going to flip them, and they're going to help us draw our new graph. So if I switch the domain and range for these 3 points, I'm switching my x and y's, and we're going to plot the new points. So 0, 1, we already have, and then 1, 0, and then, sorry, this should be 0, -1. Sorry. 0, -1 makes a big difference. 0, -1, and then 1, 0, and then 2, 1. So for our inverse, it's going to have the same shape and it's going to go in the same order, but it's going to be flipped to look like this. And so our cubic function has kind of a sideways cubic look to it when we find the cube root, which is its inverse. All right, you go through the same steps. Pick out a couple of good points, switch the x's and y's. Go ahead and pause your video, come back when you think you have it drawn correctly, and we'll go through it together. All right, welcome back, pre-calculus. If I look at A, let's see, this looks like a nice solid point, and here, we got lots of them. So the first point here is -2, 0. Sorry, -2, that is not 0. -2, -1. That's going to become -1, -2. So -1, -2 would be down here. My next point is -1, 1. And that is going to become 1, -1. So 1, -1 is here. And then the last point I chose was 0, 3. And that would become the point 3, 0, which is here. And so we're going to connect the dots. Notice this nice point down here. What is that point? Well, it's -3, -3. And when I switched them, it would be -3, -3. And that's why they both have that same point in common. All right, looking at B, well, we've got the point 0, 0, but when we switch 0, 0, it's still 0, 0. We don't have any nice, happy points. I guess we could go with this 40. This almost looks like 40 and then halfway between 0 and 10. So I'm going to say 40 and 5. That would become 5, 40. So if I were to graph that one, 5 is roughly here, 40 is up here. So it's about here. And it's going to make that same shape. Ooh. Same square root shape. It's hard for me to do a nice smooth curve there, but you get the idea. Same square root shape, but it's heading up towards the y-axis instead of out along the x-axis. All right, hopefully you did well on that. It's time for you to head on over to your homework and get it turned in before you start chapter 2.